She called it trespassing, so she ordered a dog to maul my 12-year-old nephew. No leash, no warning, just blood on the grass and a smile on her face. But she had no idea who his uncle was. I didn't call the cops. I built a case. I uncovered the lies, and I turned her HOA kingdom into a courtroom bloodbath. She thought she'd walk free. Instead, she walked in a vest with a trash claw in front of the same neighbors she once ruled. This isn't just a lawsuit. It's war. And by the time it ends, she'll be the one begging for rules. Stay to the end, because justice doesn't bark. It bites. The shortcut was harmless. Ethan took it every afternoon, crossing the trimmed HOA lawn like 100 neighbors before him. It shaved 2 minutes off his walk from school. He always stayed on the edge, never stepped on flower beds, never left trash, just a quiet, respectful 12-year-old boy with a backpack and a gentle gait. But that day, Lorraine Mitchell was watching. The self-appointed queen of our neighborhood, with her brunette bob, oversized sunglasses, and clipboard like a weapon, stood on her porch like a predator scenting prey. Her eyes locked on Ethan with disgust, as if he'd just defaced a monument instead of simply walking home. She didn't call out, didn't ask him to stop. She whistled. And that's when it happened. From behind her iron gate, a blur of tan muscle and rage exploded into motion. A Belgian Malinois, lean, unrestrained, unmuzzled, launched across the lawn with military precision. Ethan turned, confused at first, then ran. But it was too late. The dog caught him mid-stride, knocking him down hard. A scream tore from his lungs as teeth sank deep into his thigh. Blood sprayed across the perfect green. And Lorraine laughed. I heard about it before I saw it. The phone rang while I was cleaning out the garage. The hospital. Ethan was in the ER. Dog attack, lacerations, potential nerve damage. I drove like a man possessed. When I arrived, I found him shivering under a heat lamp, his leg bandaged and swollen, and 4 taped to his arm. He looked up at me, not with fear but with shame, as if he'd done something wrong. She said I trespassed, he whispered. She said I deserved it. I clenched my fists, my jaw locked so tight I could hear it pop. She what? I growled. That's when the nurse handed me a clipboard with the incident report. Witness states the HOA president authorized K-9 response for repeated boundary violations. K-9 response for a kid walking home. I stormed out of the hospital and straight to the scene. The grass was still stained. No cones, no tape, no apology. Just Lorraine standing across the street, arms folded, talking to another board member like nothing had happened. You proud of yourself? I barked as I stepped onto the lawn. Lorraine didn't flinch. She turned slowly, lips curled in that signature smirk. Maybe now your nephew will learn, she said. Rules are rules. You sick tyrant, I snapped. You unleashed an animal on a child. That child ignored posted signs. This isn't a public park. It's private property. I took 1 step closer, voice cold as steel. You think you can hide behind your bylaws and clipboards? You assaulted a minor. I swear I'll burn your paper castle to the ground. Lorraine scoffed, but for the first time, I saw a flicker in her eyes. Not defiance, not superiority. Fear. You'll regret threatening me, she hissed. No, I said, stepping back, breathing deep. You'll regret ever laying eyes on that boy. I turned and walked away, not because I was done, but because I was just getting started. Behind me, the wind blew through the leaves like whispers of judgment. Blood was still on the grass, and justice was already in motion. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. Instead, I sat at my desk with a mug of cold coffee and the medical report on Ethan's injuries. Deep punctures, possible tendon damage, high risk of infection. And then the worst line. Owner refused to provide proof of rabies vaccination. Claimed dog was above reproach. Lorraine Mitchell, above reproach. That's how she's always seen herself, untouchable, invincible, untethered by the consequences that govern the rest of us. But I know dogs. I've studied their behavior for decades. I've trained them, rehabilitated them, treated them. That animal wasn't reacting. It was obeying. So I went digging. Before sunrise, I was parked outside HOA HQA flimsy trailer posing as authority. I demanded the security logs. At first, they resisted. Then I showed them my state vet ID and the legal consequences of obstruction. They caved. The footage was grainy but damning. Ethan walking along the edge of the grass. Lorraine standing near her porch, dog leashed. She watched him, waited, and Thena deliberate flick of her wrist, a command. The dog bolted. She didn't move, didn't call it back. But she did smile. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Later that morning, I marched to the county animal control office. No license on file, no rabies certificate. The dog wasn't registered, wasn't vaccinated, wasn't legal. I filed the formal complaint with evidence. Then I went home and printed the still frames, one by one Lorraine's face, the leash, the second she unleashed violence like it was her birthright. When I called her, she didn't pick up. So I left a message. You used a living weapon on a child, and you did it with a smile. You want war, Lorraine? You just picked the wrong damn family. I taped the footage to my wall. I wasn't looking at a dog attack anymore. I was looking at premeditated harm, a weaponized HOA presidency. And I wasn't going to fight this alone. Not anymore. If you think Lorraine crossed the line the moment she unleashed that dog, type 2 in the comments and let her know this fight isn't one-sided anymore. I didn't just want justice for Ethan. I wanted an audit of every wound Lorraine Mitchell had ever inflicted. And I didn't believe for a second that my family was the only one bleeding. So I started knocking on doors not with hope, with intent. The first was Mr. Larson, a retired air traffic controller who used to sit under the massive oak tree that shaded his porch. Last year, Lorraine ordered him to cut it down, saying the roots were interfering with the HOA's irrigation system. He protested. She fined him $900 a week until he gave in. Now his porch bakes in silence. He didn't hesitate when I asked. I thought I was the only one, he said, voice low. She told me if I kept talking, I'd lose my home. The second was Rachel Evans, a single mother with 2 kids, working nights at the hospital. Her daughter used to keep a small rabbit in a cage behind their shed. Lorraine called animal control, said it was a nuisance farm. She threatened eviction unless Rachel rehomed the vermin. She made my child cry for a week, Rachel whispered, and smiled when she did it. By the 5th house, I didn't need to explain. The faces that opened the door all wore the same expression, recognition and fear. They'd all seen the leash not on a dog, but around their necks. Lorraine didn't govern. She hunted. She fined a pregnant woman for hanging laundry. She humiliated a father for putting up a swing set. She dismantled a community and rebuilt it in her own twisted image, one silent punishment at a time. And the worst part? They all thought they were alone. Until now. I brought them to my house on a Sunday night. 9 of us sat around my kitchen table like survivors at a war tribunal. They told their stories, one after another, not with rage, but with the quiet heartbreak of people who had buried their voices for too long. I listened. I didn't interrupt. And when the room went silent, I stood. She picked us off one by one. But she made a mistake this time. She went after a child. My child. And now she's not just dealing with me. She's dealing with all of us. They looked at each other, then at me, and nodded. It was no longer about bruises, fines, or fear. It was about taking back our street, our dignity, and the one truth Lorraine never saw coming. You can rule by fear until the fear decides to fight back. I needed proof, not just stories, not just bruises and bitter memories. I needed hard evidence, something that could burn through Lorraine's smug denials like acid. So I went after her castle, the HOA office files. It wasn't a fortress, just a back room in the community center, locked with a keypad Lorraine thought only she knew. What she didn't count on was one of the residents, Marcus, a former board member, still knowing the code. I'll take the risk, he said. If we don't stop her now, she'll outlive all of us. We entered just after sunset. No alarms, no guards, just 2 cheap file cabinets and a dusty hard drive humming behind a row of binders. What we found? Weaponized paperwork. Fines issued without warning, notices backdated to trap residents. HOA board meetings fabricated on paper, minutes typed up for gatherings that never happened. There were invoices for landscaping work that never occurred, paid out to shell companies. And guess whose name showed up as the consultant for every single transaction? Lorraine Mitchell. She wasn't just a tyrant. She was a thief. I kept flipping until my hands shook. One file stopped me cold, a document titled Flagged Residents Watch List. 9 names, all of us, with notes like, Rachel, emotional, can be pressured. Larson, old, stubborn, isolate. Me, dangerous, watch if he starts asking questions. My blood boiled. Lorraine didn't just want control. She wanted dominion. She's been tracking us, I said, voice tight. Like enemies. Marcus stared at the folder, pale. She was planning something bigger. I nodded. Then we'll give her what she didn't plan for. Exposure. I scanned every document, every signature, every dirty trick, the kind of trail no court could ignore, the kind of rot no HOA could survive. When we stepped back out into the night, I looked up at Lorraine's house, glowing across the street. I didn't see a home. I saw a throne made of lies, and I was ready to drag it down. I didn't wait. The next morning, I walked into Carter and Hayes' civil litigation firm downtown and dropped a thumb drive on the paralegal's desk like a detonator. "What's this?" she asked. "Every documented abuse of power from HOA President Lorraine Mitchell over the last 3 years," I said, "plus a list of 9 plaintiffs ready to bring her kingdom crashing down." By noon, we had a case: fraud, misappropriation, harassment, civil conspiracy, and the crown jewel intentional infliction of emotional distress on a minor. When the official summons reached Lorraine's doorstep, she didn't hide. She doubled down. That night, she called for an emergency HOA meeting, one she broadcast across the neighborhood like it was a State of the Union address. Her tone wasn't defensive. It was smug. "To the residents of Willow Creek," she began, standing beneath the community flag like a dictator on her balcony. "I regret to inform you that several individuals in this neighborhood have launched a baseless smear campaign against me and this board. They claim abuse. They claim corruption. In truth, they simply hate structure." I stepped into the crowd, arms crossed, watching her spin fiction into gospel. "These attacks," she said, "are coordinated by a man who let his nephew trespass and now seeks to extort your HOA funds through litigation. I suggest we show him and his followers that this community will not be shaken by fearmongers." Someone clapped. A few others followed, out of confusion, maybe out of fear. I didn't move. When it ended, I approached her, not in private, in full view. "You just declared war," I said flatly. Lorraine smirked, eyes glinting like a wolf in moonlight. "I declared order, something your kind clearly can't handle." I leaned in, low and cold. "I gave you a chance to step down. You chose spectacle. Now you'll get the stage and the spotlight when the subpoenas start flying." She stepped back, just half a pace. That night, emails flew. Rumors churned. The neighborhood split like dry wood. Some rallied behind us, emboldened. Others panicked, unsure which side would win. But the truth? It wasn't about sides anymore. It was about whether justice still had a voice in a place where power had been abused for far too long. And I just made sure that voice had teeth. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Cold fluorescent lights flickered above us as we walked into the chamber, 9 plaintiffs and 2 attorneys who smelled blood. Lorraine entered 10 minutes late, wearing red, not burgundy, not maroon, blood red, like she was daring the court to blink first. She represented herself, of course. Said she didn't trust lawyers, said she didn't need help defending the truth. What she needed, I thought, was a leash and a muzzle. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, barely glanced at the introductions before calling the case forward. Our counsel opened with calm precision. "Your Honor, this is not a dispute over landscaping. This is not about HOA regulations. This is about a pattern of behavior, a deliberate, escalating abuse of authority resulting in physical harm, emotional trauma, and financial exploitation." He handed over Exhibit A, the footage. Ethan on the lawn, Lorraine on the porch, the flick of her wrist, the dog charging, the blood. Lorraine didn't flinch. She leaned back, arms folded, and yawned. "I'm sorry," she said after a beat. "Is that it?" I clenched my jaw. I wanted to lunge across the room, but I stayed still because she was about to dig her own grave. When the judge asked if she'd like to respond, Lorraine stood and launched into a tirade. "This entire circus is beneath me," she said. "These people hate rules. They hate accountability. I gave this neighborhood structure. I gave it order, and now they turn on me because one boy couldn't read a sign. You sick the dog on him," the judge said evenly. "I defended property lines," Lorraine snapped. "If we allow chaos, we lose everything. Children must learn." My voice cut in, cold, clear, loud. "Children must learn not to bleed on your lawn." "Is that it, Lorraine?" She turned, furious. "You're a coward hiding behind lawyers." I stood slowly. I'm a man standing for 10 families you've terrorized. For every tree you ordered chopped, every pet you had confiscated, every dollar you stole through fake repairs. You think you're HOA royalty? No, you're a fraud with a clipboard. The room froze. Even the judge leaned forward. Lorraine opened her mouth, then slammed it shut when the next exhibit went up. Her resident watch list, annotated in her own handwriting. The air snapped with tension. She tried to object, raised her voice, slammed a hand on the table. Control yourself, the judge warned. That's your first and final warning. I didn't smile. Not yet. But I knew the throne beneath her feet was cracking. And this was just the beginning. Lorraine always thought fear was loyalty. She didn't build a community. She built a cage. And for years, no one rattled the bars. Until now. 3 days after her courtroom meltdown, something changed. First, it was the silence. The porch lights that used to stay on at her command dark. The neighbors who used to nod and smile now crossed the street when she walked by. Flyers, once posted with her signature font, vanished overnight. But the crack turned into a break when Clara Vaughn spoke up. Clara was one of Lorraine's oldest allies, treasurer of the HOA, the one who used to pass out rule books like candy. She defended Lorraine for everything, from lawn paint regulations to mailbox height disputes. But during the second hearing, Clara stood up and flipped. "Your Honor," she said, voice trembling. "I was told to falsify HOA meeting minutes. I was told to sign off on invoices I never saw. I was told to stay quiet or face the same fines as everyone else." Lorraine's head jerked like she'd been slapped. "Lies," she screamed. "She's bitter. She's weak. She always was." Clara's eyes glistened, but she didn't waver. "No, Lorraine. I was scared. You made us all scared." Her words landed like a thunderclap. That evening, our phones exploded. Emails, calls, anonymous tips. People we hadn't even approached began stepping forward, one by one, like dominoes finally tipping. The HOA inbox was flooded with resignations and testimonies. The board was fracturing. So was Lorraine's mask. She called an emergency neighborhood meeting again, this time behind closed doors. I showed up anyway. She tried to block me. "This is for members only." I stared her down. "I am a member. And unlike you, I read the bylaws." Inside, she ranted. She blamed deep state infiltration. She said the court was biased, the residents were brainwashed by socialism. But no one clapped. No one nodded. They just watched her fall apart. When she stormed off the stage, I walked up and took the microphone she dropped. "I don't want her job," I said. "I want this community back. And if we let her drag us down with her, then we deserve every broken fence, every silenced neighbor, every terrified child. But if we stand now, together, she doesn't get to rule anymore." The crowd erupted. People who hadn't spoken in years raised their hands, their voices, their fists. Lorraine had ruled with fear, but fear had finally switched sides. The verdict came on a stormy morning. The courtroom was packed. Residents lined the back wall. Reporters sat shoulder to shoulder in the press row. And Lorraine Mitchell, once queen of Willow Creek, sat alone at the defendant's table in a blazer one size too tight. Her jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. She didn't speak, not once. Maybe she'd finally figured out that her voice, her poison, only made things worse. The judge read through each count slowly, like the sound of bricks being laid into her tomb. Guilty on misappropriation of community funds. Guilty on falsification of HOA documents. Guilty on harassment and retaliation against multiple residents. And then came the one that mattered most. Guilty on intentional infliction of emotional distress against a minor. Ethan's name rang through the chamber like thunder. Lorraine didn't flinch, but she didn't breathe either. The judge didn't stop there. Lorraine Mitchell is hereby removed from all positions of authority within the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, effective immediately. She is barred from holding any HOA office statewide for no less than 10 years. Lorraine blinked once, and the judge continued. As part of this court's restorative justice measures, she will be required to complete 200 hours of supervised labor on community grounds she once governed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But that wasn't the end. I am also ordering a public apology to be delivered in front of the HOA board, the residents of Willow Creek, and the plaintiff family. This apology will be filmed and made a matter of permanent public record. Lorraine finally spoke. You can't make me humiliate myself. The judge leveled her eyes. Ma'am, you humiliated yourself the moment you turned a family's lawn into a battlefield. 2 days later, we gathered at the community square, the same place where Lorraine once gave her HOA speeches like she was delivering royal decrees. But this time, there was no flag behind her, just a folding chair and a handheld mic. She stepped up, wearing a neon yellow vest labeled Community Service in Progress. Her voice cracked before the first word escaped. I want to apologize, she muttered. Louder, someone called out. She winced. I want to apologize to Ethan and to the residents. I let power blind me. I caused harm. She looked down, shaking, swallowed shame. I watched, arms crossed, standing beside my nephew, his legs still bandaged. I don't forgive you, I said quietly. But this is a start. Lorraine didn't respond. She simply turned, stepped off the stage, and grabbed a trash picker. Behind her, the residents began clapping, not for her, for freedom. The grass grew back. Not all at once, and not without care, but it grew brighter, greener than before, as if the land itself had decided to breathe again. After years under the weight of fear, Lorraine was gone, not vanished, just removed, stripped of her throne, her title, and the illusion of invincibility she'd wrapped around herself like armor. The last time I saw her, she was hauling bags of mulch under the hot sun, sweat soaking through that neon vest, while the community she once ruled passed by without a glance. No one cursed her. No one cheered either. She had become irrelevant. And honestly, that was worse for her than prison. The HOA board was dissolved and rebuilt from scratch, this time with transparency, with empathy, with rules that serve people instead of strangling them. Clara Vaughn was voted chairwoman, this time by real votes, not manipulated proxies. And I declined every offer for office. I'm not here to manage rules, I told them. I just want to make sure no one uses them as a weapon again. But the moment that stuck with me, etched itself into my memory, came 2 weeks later. We held a small ceremony at the park, the same park that bordered the lawn where Ethan bled. It wasn't fancy, no balloons, no speeches, just neighbors. We stood together in a quiet circle while a maintenance crew unveiled a modest wooden sign, freshly carved, planted into the soil where the grass had once turned red. It read, Ethan's Walk, where justice took its first step. Ethan stood next to me, his hand still gripping the top of his crutch. His eyes lit up when he saw his name. He didn't smile, by rarely does. But his lips curled just enough, and he whispered, It's ours now. I looked around and realized what he meant. The silence was no longer fear. It was peace. Children played again on the sidewalks. Rachel's daughter had a new rabbit. Mr. Larson replanted his oak tree, this time with help. And the mailboxes? They didn't all match anymore. Some were blue, some had flowers, no fines, no threats, just a neighborhood free to breathe again. Lorraine's reign hadn't just ended. It had been buried, paved over by something stronger than fear, solidarity, truth, memory. That's what Ethan's walk meant, not vengeance, but survival. Not punishment, but promise. And as I looked up into the morning light, I felt something settle in my chest. Not pride, not victory, but a quiet, steady certainty. If justice could bloom on this patch of grass, it could grow anywhere. In the end, it wasn't about bylaws. It wasn't about HOA fees, lawn maintenance, or who stepped where. It was about what happens when the wrong person is handed too much power and what kind of silence that power can create when good people are too afraid to speak up. Lorraine Mitchell didn't just weaponize her authority. She turned a peaceful neighborhood into a surveillance zone. She used fear like fertilizer, spreading it until no one dared grow. But here's what she forgot. Fear is only effective when it's alone. Once it multiplies, it stops obeying. And that's what happened the moment Ethan screamed. That was the crack in her kingdom, the moment her paper crown caught fire. She thought she could hide behind rule books. She thought no one would challenge her. She thought I'd just file a complaint and move on. Instead, we filed a lawsuit and moved the entire neighborhood. We didn't just win in court. We reclaimed the street, the air, the right to breathe without permission. Today, Ethan still limps slightly when the weather shifts. His scars haven't faded, and maybe they never will. But what has changed is his voice. He walks past that patch of grass every day now, head high. And he doesn't avoid it. He owns it. Because on that spot, justice didn't just speak. It planted roots. And to anyone listening now, maybe dealing with your own Lorraine, whether it's an HOA tyrant, a corrupt board, or a system that seems too loud to fight, let me say this. You are not alone. You have more power than you think. You have neighbors who've been waiting for someone to take the first step. You have a voice. And when you use it, even dictators have to listen. If this story hit you hard, if it reminded you of something you've seen, lived, or fought through, drop a comment below and tell us. What would you name your Ethan's walk? What moment in your life taught you that standing up matters? Type it, share it. Someone else might need it more than you know. And if you think stories like this deserve to be heard, smash that like button so more people see what justice looks like when it's not wearing a suit. Subscribe for more true battles, real takedowns, and stories where the ones who were underestimated get the last word. Because here, we don't just expose the abuse of power. We bury it. And the next time someone like Lorraine draws a line in the grass, we'll be waiting.